There was a lot of hand wringing over the time of the handover from uh, to the PRC in 1997, and that hand wringing was very much overblown at the time. I mean, Hong Kong enjoyed an extraordinary burst of economic activity, financial market vitality, as the Chinese growth and development story exploded. But in the last several years, and I guess the turning point were the massive protests and demonstrations of late 2019 that evoked a sharp political response from the PRC. That, in conjunction with COVID, with the severe structural headwinds bearing down on the Chinese economy, and with the intensified conflict
Right.
between the US and China that has left Hong Kong sort of stuck in the
Right.
crossfire, all of that has come together to really
Right.
paint a much more dire picture than we'd like
Right.
to think.
Stephen, my dialogue with Chris Patten, Lord Patten, who is the British representative to this debacle, there's always been great emotion, including the day it was given up and different other signposts along the way. Can the Chinese find a middle ground? Can Beijing find a new Hong Kong that alludes to what you and Lord Patten knew?
I think it's going to be hard to recreate the Hong Kong that we all loved. I mean, you got to be careful here. I mean, I love Hong Kong. I still do. I have great friends there. Go back there a lot. I was there 3 times last year, even though one of the Hong Kong legislators wrote in a letter to the FT that I hadn't been there in years. I've got great friends and contacts and a wonderful history there. But, just like an investor should not be in love with a stock when it reaches a valuation target, I think you got to be careful about being in love with a city or a system or a nation and letting that cloud your analytical assessment of the problems.
So, Stephen, I just coincidentally, I happened to be in Hong Kong the exact day of the handover. And, back in the day, if you were on global Wall Street, you had to do a tour of duty in Hong Kong. Much like in the 80s, you had to do a tour of duty in Tokyo. Where do the Western financial institutions, how are they viewing Hong Kong going forward?
Well, I think there's an understandable concern over the future of Hong Kong. My old firm, Morgan Stanley, is very committed to Hong Kong right now. It's the headquarters of the Asian operations, excluding Japan. And yet, when you go back and talk to people, at least in 2023, they want to feel optimistic. They want to believe that Hong Kong is still a sustainable platform for business. But there's a nervous. They're looking over their shoulder, and they live through these massive, unprecedented protests, and they focus very much on what is going on in Beijing and Xi Jinping's very tough,
Right.
ideologically driven clampdown on the PRC, and they know that it has implications for Hong Kong as well.
It's interesting, Stephen. It just kind of goes to the greater issue. There obviously are geopolitical tensions between the West and China seemingly growing in scale, yet we still see Western business leaders going to China, Tim Cook, whoever you want, Elon Musk. How do you think the Western corporate world is viewing Greater China these days?
Well, like I was with, at the same meeting that Tim Cook was in last March when he sort of made a token appearance to the China Development Forum. He was in and out. It was not necessarily, a man who wanted to roll up his sleeves and go to work in trying to understand what was going on in China. He did it because, as he said, when he met with the premier, Apple was celebrating its 30th anniversary of being present in China, and they have a
Right.
major commitment to that. A few weeks later, he was in India opening a new store in Mumbai and talking about Apple's new
Yeah.
commitment to India as well. So, there's again, they're hedging their bets.
Right, Steve, I want to talk about accidental conflict. Roach writes prolifically, folks. See, he's over at Yale. Like Christina Moore's talking about Harvard
Yep.
doing an easy A. There's no easy A at Yale.
No.
I mean, Roach is giving out quality C's like nobody. Steve, you did accidental conflict, America, China, and the clash of the false narratives. And it made me think of the great Catherine Mann, now at the Bank of England, and the idea of the codependency between China and the United States. Is our codependency unchanged? How did you address that in accidental conflict?
Well, I argued, Tom, that the codependency framework is still a good framework to describe the relationship. But as is the case in human relationships, it's a precarious relationship between individuals and I would dare say economies. And when one partner, in this case, one economy starts to go its own way, the other feels scorned and lashes back, and conflict emerges. And we're now in, what psychologists who study human codependency would call the classic conflict phase of codependency. And, that's the quagmire that is
Right.
proving so difficult to climb out of.